We welcome back former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributor. And I know you've been spending a lot of time in Rome. How did you like it? How have you liked it so far?
Well, Krista's done an amazing job as the ambassador to the Vatican. She's been very well received. It's a really remarkable experience. But I have to say, I feel the same enthusiasm and excitement as Paul Ryan does. As you know, because you and I have been talking about this for, 6 or 8 months. Moving this bill forward, getting it to where it is now pushing it over the finishing line, it's just extraordinarily important. And I think, we have to recognize what a remarkable achievement it was. The House met the schedule you and I had set, get it through by Thanksgiving. The Senate's actually moving much faster than I thought they would. So I have some hope that they may actually meet the Christmas deadline and give the American people a pretty big Christmas present.
There are a lot of aspects of this that I look as a supply side Reagan conservative that I like a lot. I like the corporate cut. It's dramatic, from 35 to 20%. I like the repatriation. I think that's something we should have done a long time ago. And that's hopefully will bring trillions of dollars back into the economy for factories and manufacturing centers. I like the deregulation of the president, ending burdensome regulations on business. That's already been happening. That is why we've had growth this year, in my opinion. The energy component is huge, but on personal rates, it seems the Republicans just have given up any notion of across-the-board tax cuts because they don't want to fight the battle of, these are tax cuts for the rich, because most people that pay taxes are going to see, especially if you live in New York and New Jersey and California and Illinois, you're paying more. It's just a fact.
Well, first of all, forgive me for sounding like I'm not in New York as one of those rich guys paying lots of taxes, like Chuck Schumer, who I think took $58,000 in lower taxes from the federal government for his income last year in New York. New York, Connecticut, California, New Jersey are very big government states. They're also very big government union states, and they're very expensive. And the rest of the country has been subsidizing them. We've basically been encouraging people to dump the cost of their state government on the rest of us. Now, I know that's not popular with my friends in those delegations, but it's true.
Well, I can tell. Listen, I live in New York. I'm going to get hurt by this bill. But the principle, though, I agree with that, getting rid of the state deductions. But I do think Reagan went from...
well, by the way, I do think they put in a $10,000 deduction for property taxes. So unless you are very, very successful, the combination of doubling the individual deduction and what they have done in terms of that property tax break, I think for about 80% or 85% of the country, even in the high tax states, there's still going to be a tax break.
I'm in the second highest property tax county in the country, Nassau County, Long Island.
Right.
Yeah, I'm getting killed. But I'll tell you why I'm supporting it. I'm supporting it because I do believe this is going to encourage dramatic economic growth. There's a forecast out today that went to 3.8% fourth quarter GDP growth. If we hit 4% by the end of this year, if the Senate can get this done, it'll be an opportunity. And I've always been very consistent. I want the people that have been left behind in poverty and on food stamps and out of the labor force. I want them working. This bill isn't about me. I just don't like that Republicans seem afraid of the argument. I think it would be a much better plan. Larry Kudlow actually agreed with me. If you'd cut the taxes across the board, 20% of Americans pay 90-some-odd% of the taxes.
Look, it would have been a much better bill in theory, but it wouldn't have passed. And as you know, from day one of my lessons from what happened with Obamacare was write a bill you can pass. When we did the contract with America, you could have looked at 3 or 4 things we did not put in the contract. And the reason we did not put them in is we knew that the New York Times and CBS News and all the rest of them would have promptly focused only on those items, refused to report the rest of it, and attacked us over and over again. So we just said, no, we're not going to set up a target. The biggest thing in the long run for America in this bill is a 20% corporate tax rate. That is going to lead to an explosion of job creation in the United States. It's going to make our companies competitive worldwide in a way that is going to shock our foreign friends. Combined with the fact that there's a pass-through for small business, that is going to be a very big tax cut for small businesses, and that's the real job creation engine. And if we can get to 4 or 5% growth a year, create tons of new jobs, put people to work who've not been to work for a decade, give people hope. And by the way, that economic growth helps the state of New York. It helps Nassau County because the economy gets bigger.
This isn't about me. No, listen.
There's more revenue.
The corporate tax cuts, ending burdensome regulation, repatriation, and energy is a formula for, I believe, massive economic growth, and that's why I'm supporting it. I just am saying I think it could be better. I believe in Reagan's supply side cross-the-board cuts. I think would even make it better. But listen, I want whatever we can get here, and I think you're right. I think.
Yeah, but remember, Chris had a movie called Ronald Reagan: Rendezvous with Destiny, and in there we have this great moment where Reagan says, "Look, if I can get 80%, I'll take it and come back later."
Exactly.
This is a huge step in the right direction. Nobody listening to us should be confused. They should be calling their senators and saying, get a tax bill out of the Senate. There's no excuse for not finding the votes to get a tax bill out of the Senate. And by the way, that includes Democrats. There are 6 or 8 Democrats in very Trump states who are up for re-election. Every single one of them should be under pressure to vote for this bill.
Agreed. Are you confident it gets done before the end of the year?
Confidence is too strong a word. I'm hopeful it gets done. I think it can get done. I think there's some hard pieces to work out yet. They have a very, very narrow margin in the Senate. They got to get to 50. That means they can lose 1 or 2 at the most, which is part of why I think they ought to be really building a lot of pressure in states like West Virginia and Indiana and Missouri, because they should really be pressuring those Democrats to vote yes.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about, we have all these situations unfolding as it relates to sexual harassment. Last week it was Al Franken. You have allegations against Roy Moore. How do we best handle these things as they come up? And yes, and one other thing, I'm making the argument that the left in this country turned a blind eye to every single Clinton sexual scandal that there was, but only because of his politics. And in that sense, they created a lot of damage out there. They, all those women were smeared and slandered and besmirched. It all turns out to be true. What is your take about where we are, how we got here, and how does this end, and how should it end?
Well, let me say, first of all, and this is going to probably make me a little bit unpopular, I think you've got to put, and some of these are terrible circumstances, some of them are just stupid circumstances, some of them are genuine exploitation, some of them are genuine oppression. And I think you've got to look at it, and I think people should not be harassed, and people should not be intimidated. But let me also point out for all of our friends on the left who are now so worked up about this, how about talking about what happens to young women in Somalia? How about talking about what happens to young women in Pakistan? How about talking about what happens all across the world in places that nobody on the left wants to deal with, where it is horrendous and terrible and much worse than what we have ever seen in the United States? And let's not just focus on incidents in the United States that involve somebody being harassed. Let's talk about places where people are raped, people are killed, people are mutilated. All of a sudden, nobody on the left wants to talk about that. And I think that it's, I think the role of women worldwide deserves an honest, deep conversation. And the United States is a piece of that. But the United States has also got, there are lots of other places in the world we ought to be looking at. Agreed.
But I mean, there's also what we have here in this country, and that is that, if you look at the Clintons and the abuse of women and all of the excuses that were made, it really irritated me in the last election. Nobody cared that Hillary took all this money from countries that abuse women, kill gays and lesbians, and persecute Christians and Jews. That's a big deal.
Well, look, not only that.
And they bought her silence.
I think in some ways, the most amazing moment of the 2016 campaign was Trump bringing the women who had accused Clinton to the debate. I mean, the level of guts that took, the willingness to get in their face and say, no, I'm not just going to let you beat me up. Let's go ahead. You want to talk about this? Let's talk about this. I thought that was as staggeringly brilliant and frankly gutsy as anything I'd seen. And you'll notice, by the way, that there's now a whole new sort of revisionism underway that says, gee, maybe we're wrong. I mean, there are people on the left begin to go, okay, maybe in fact the independent counsel was right. Now that was an article in today's paper. I mean,
yeah,
there's a genuine discussion underway in the country, and one of the things I'm starting to work on a book for next year on the whole notion of understanding MAGA as sort of the second stage after understanding Trump. And one of the things I'm working on is this whole notion that you have had this inability to come to grips with reality that is beginning to break down. And if you want to talk about the party of sex offenders, they're the Democrats. These are the people who are, go down the list of who they raise money for. Take the list of all the Hollywood people who've been outed and go find out from the FEC reports who they raise money for.
Mm-hmm. I think we're finding out more and more. All right, got to take a break. We'll come back on the other side. More with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, as we continue. All right, as we continue with Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, let me change topics a little bit. There is a STRATCOM commander, and he's the commander of the U.S. nuclear force. He ignited quite a bit of controversy when he said Saturday that he would not follow an illegal order from the president. Quote, if you execute an unlawful order, you can go to jail, and you could go to jail for the rest of your life. Right. And he was asked this, but I'm a little concerned of how he gets to decide what is legal and illegal. He said the way the process works is simple.
No.
You don't want me to read his remarks?
Go ahead.
The way the process works,
I apologize.
Is it simple? I provide advice to the president. He'll tell me what to do, and if it's illegal, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to say to Mr. President, that's illegal. Guess what he's going to do at that point? He's going to say, what would be illegal? And then we'll come up with options or what would be legal of a mix of capabilities to respond. I almost got the impression he's saying that he is the final arbiter in the use of nuclear weapons, and that is troublesome to me.
Yeah, well, he didn't follow through the full process. Ever since the Nuremberg trials about the Nazis, we've had a clear rule, and it's been in law, and we're very serious about it. And on the rare occasion of Vietnam when it was violated, we prosecuted people for violating it. And that is that, in fact, you cannot use following orders as an excuse for breaking the law. This goes all the way back to, for example, Cali, who killed people who were innocent civilians. So the fact that he says, notice what he said, if it is an illegal order, I won't execute it. Well, of course not. It would be illegal to execute an illegal order. On the other hand, he forgot part two. He says to the president, Mr. President, who is commander-in-chief, remember, not just the Rotary Club president, says, Mr. President, this order is illegal. The president then has two options. Option one is to say, well, is there a legal way to get this done? Option two is to say, I accept your resignation. Now, Fred, you're now the new commander of STRATCOM. Will you execute this order? And that can be done in seconds.
That is... it's not like this guy... No, I'm listening to you. It just seemed unnecessary to say... because, of course, if it's illegal, but I'm not sure. It sounded to me like that the president would be checking with him, or if he didn't like the order, even though he said if it's illegal. That's what it sounded a little like to me. It didn't sound like that at all to you?
Well, look, I don't want to get inside this guy's head and try to psychoanalyze a four-star general who's trying to do his job. I think technically what he said was right. I think that he should have put in the second part of that, which is that it's not his prerogative in the end to decide if it's legal. It's the president's. That's how the Constitution works. But if he refuses to execute it, the president can immediately replace him. I mean, immediately. All
right, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, we'll see you on TV tonight. A lot more news we got to get to. Thank you, sir, for being with us. And 800-941-SEAN is our number.